Stop me if this has happened to you. You're hanging with a bunch of fellow music consumers for the first time, and you break the ice by asking what their dream supergroup would be. For those who don't know what a supergroup is, that's when a bunch of musicians from other bands or projects come together to make their own band. One I'm sure a lot of you know is Temple of the Dog. This had Matt Cameron and Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, and Jeff Ament, Mike McCready, and Stone Gossard from, at the time, Mother's Love Bone, and then Pearl Jam. And even though it's really cool seeing your favorite musicians write stuff together, what really makes a good supergroup is how everyone's style mixes. These types of projects can be amazing for showing off another side of an artist's abilities. Like, you can still tell it's them at the end of the day, but being in that type of collaborative setting forces some type of change. So today, let's check out some of my favorite supergroups and how their members shape the sound. Only rule is no repeating members, so like, if I talked about Temple of the Dog, I couldn't talk about Mad Season, since Mike McCready's in both. There's only so many supergroups I know, but I like to give myself a challenge. Anyway, let's start with this one. First up, we got One Day as a Lion. This was a supergroup with Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine and John Theodore from Mars Volta. I'm sure a lot of you know other Rage supergroups like Audioslave or Prophets of Rage, but I wanted to talk about this one because I feel it's the most its own thing out of them all. You know, nothing against those other bands, but since both of them were essentially Rage Against the Machine without Zach, it makes sense why they sound a bit like Rage. One Day as a Lion has some of Rage's mannerisms, but I feel these guys stand out more because of the fact they're a duo. Speaking from experience, being in a duo is not easy, because you gotta fill as much space as possible with as little people as possible. And even though that limits a lot of stuff you can do, it also forces you to think outside of the box, for not just the sound, but the roles of each instrument. Instead of using guitar like you'd expect from Rage, One Day as a Lion uses these really gritty synthesizers as both the hooks, grooves, and really anything the song needs. Some highlights for me are on the title track, where you got these high-end synths playing these really groovy quarter notes halfway in that are definitely the most Rage vibes out of anything. Or on Ocean View, where you got these low notes against what sounds like to me a sci-fi battle going on. Zach's voice sounds great too. He's still got a lot of power and aggression and a lot of great lyrics too. But for me, the biggest star are the drums, which I'll admit I'm a little biased because John Theodore is one of my favorite drummers, but oh my god, he kills it. His drums are like the main instrument for most of the songs. I feel it's a combination of being assertive and finding spots to groove on. Their songs have a cool dynamic where the synths and melodies will remain the same while the drums either build or change beats to signify a change. I like that a lot because you don't always need to change chords or your pattern or whatever to signify a chorus. Sometimes it's just one thing that makes all the difference. And that's all without mentioning how good his drums sound too. I love when drums have a little bit of roominess to them, you know? You get that perfect amount of resonance to make them sound huge. Sadly, this project was short-lived, which is pretty common for supergroups, by the way. They only released one EP and haven't done anything since like 2011. They never explained why they stopped, but after this, Zach did some reunions with Rage and Run the Jewel, and John went on to join Queens of the Stone Age, so it's probably a scheduling thing. But now that Rage officially broke up for the 27th time, maybe we'll hear more of it in the future. I think there's a lot of potential. It's loud, groovy, kinda weird, no Tom Morello. What else could you ask for? Next, we got Rocket Juice and the Moon with Damon Albarn, Flea, and Tony Allen. I was really tempted to do Atoms of Peace, another project Flea did with Tom York, but I'm not gonna lie, I tried listening back to this and it's kinda boring. Rocket Juice fuses everyone's style way better, because I feel like each of these guys acts as the leader and pocket of the songs in their own way. The drums and bass in a lot of these are up-tempo, syncopated, and accent a lot of the offbeats. They're constantly dancing around each other trying to find spots to fit in. And then the keys and synths are playing either really pretty melodies or alien noises. I feel there's a lot of intentional scarcity on some of these songs, like spots where you think, oh, maybe they could have added an extra track or doubled this or whatever, and under normal circumstances, I'd say that scarcity would do more harm than good, but like I said, since everyone's on 10, it prevents the tracks from getting like overly busy, and it lets you appreciate how everything plays off each other. Legit, this is a great album for studying how to listen, not just to the song, but to what everyone's doing and why they're doing it. That's not saying all their songs are like this. They've also got a bunch with tons of cool layering and some of the most incomprehensible synth noise I've ever heard. Legit, more than once I had to pause a song and be like, what the hell am I listening to? And to be honest, that is one of my criticisms of the band, where songs can either go way too far with their weirdness, like on Extinguished, which has a synth part that scared the hell out of me the first time I heard it. It comes out of nowhere and sounds like one of those storm advisories on TV. Are ones that don't get weird enough. You got the intro song 1 to 6, which has a cool pause in the middle, but it goes back to a part we've heard before without any big changes or shakeups. They got a few other songs like this that are kind of underwhelming and short, and I feel the length works for some of the instrumentals, like Fatherless. That's a great song. But other times you wish the songs would go on for like another minute or two. Still, I'd highly recommend checking this out if you like the Chili Peppers, Gorillaz, or whatever these guys do. Listen to them if you want to get better at listening. Rip Tony Allen. Since we're on the subject of supergroups with famous bassists, let's kick it up a notch. This is SMV, a supergroup with Stanley Clarke, Marcus Miller, and Victor Wooten. 3 of probably the best bassists like ever. Like, if you haven't heard anything by Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, start here and report back. This is the Webster's Dictionary of a bass player's bass album. Like, this is bass playing that goes beyond natural occurrence. All of their songs have multiple bass lines jamming over each other. Some are melodic and play chords, some are soloing, and some are slapping like there's no tomorrow. The songs still have drums, keys, and occasional guitar, but they just stay in the background. Honestly, I feel if these were made into more traditional blues or funk rock songs with one bass and vocals, it would still be classified as a bass-driven song no matter what bass line you used. Their music also demonstrates how versatile bass guitar is. Like, the song Little Vic starts with these really pretty chords and then evolves into this crazy triumphant riff. Then tracks like Grit and Thunder are way more funky and in line with what you'd expect a bass album to sound like. There's also some smaller moments on here you'll appreciate if you're a bassist, like when they use an upright on the song Tutu, or when they tease Teen Town by Weather Report on Maestro. And for anyone who doesn't know, Teen Town is the bass equivalent to like Voodoo Child. Please listen to this supergroup if you have any appreciation for bass guitar. It's not for everybody, I totally get that, but it's definitely something worth experiencing. Also, can we please get Cover Solutions to tab out Classic Thump Jam? In the video I made before this, I said I'm not a big fan of Arctic Monkeys, and I still stand by that. But if I gotta subject myself to Alex Turner, I know I got Last of the Shadow Puppets to thank. This was a project with him and Miles Kane from the Rascals. I first heard these guys on my Discover Weekly last year and got obsessed with their album Age of the Understatement. I'm not really sure how to define their sound in terms of genre, but to me it's a combination of old 007 soundtracks and Legend of Zelda. The instrumentation on this thing is insane. It still has traditional rock stuff like guitars, drums, bass, keys, but they went all out with a full orchestra too, and they give each section a time to shine. The strings in Standing Next to Me evolve through the entire song, and it gives it so much movement by the last chorus. And the horns on Calm Like You make you feel like a cowboy riding into the sunset. This is one of those albums I'll discover something new on every time I listen to it. Whether it's an extra bit of percussion, a guitar track, a time change, it's got a lot of replay value. One of the most important aspects of an album. But I think it's also in part, this album can be kind of overwhelming. Lots of songs are up-tempo with a lot going on in a short amount of time. Most of these tracks don't even go over the 3-minute mark. That's not to say it's a bad thing. Like, I don't think any of these songs suffer from being short. But since it goes by so fast, I definitely listen to each of these individually to fully appreciate them. Also, fun fact, these guys are the only supergroup we're looking at with more than one official release. Crazy, I know. But if I'm gonna be honest, their second album, Everything You've Come to Expect, is kinda boring. Like, it's not bad, it's just not as kinetic as Understatement. There's only like 2 songs I feel capture that album's energy. Everything else just drags or is straight up boring. If you're gonna check these guys out, please listen to Understatement. That's something I feel anyone can enjoy, even if you're not into their main bands. From now on, just ignore their second album exists. Like, anytime it's brought up in conversation, just don't acknowledge it. Be like, oh, a YouTuber told me it's bad, so no one can enjoy it. So remember that rule in the intro, how there can be no repeating artists between bands? Well, that was also going to be no repeating bands they're from either. But then I remembered all the insane side projects and supergroups Queens of the Stone Age has. I already mentioned John Theodore with One Day as a Lion, but she also got the Desert Sessions, Gone is Gone, Mini Mansions, 10 Commandos. But for our last segment, we're going to look at Them Crooked Vultures, a supergroup with Josh Homme on guitar, Dave Grohl on drums, and John Paul Jones on bass. And even though this band is like over 15 years old, saying that roster out loud still feels unreal. Like, this be the quintessential example of those fake icebreaker supergroups I mentioned in the beginning. Like, anything Josh Homme related is already great, but to get one of the remaining members of Led Zeppelin, arguably the most influential rock band of all time, is also pretty crazy. And you can definitely hear that Zeppelin influence on their album. This thing sounds huge. There's a perfect amount of roominess to everything. The guitars are echoey but still pop, the bass is really deep and rattly, and the drums are so booming but also have a lot of nuance. I love the disco-y beats on Gunman against the noodly guitar riffs. There's a lot of cool songwriting like that on this album, either because of their instrument choice, changes, layering, or like what one instrument is playing over others, and it may not necessarily be what you'd expect. I love how on Newfang they play the same riff for most of the song and then go into a 7/8 variant for the outro, and then on Scumbag Blues when they bring in a keys part for the solo. These guys also love to jam. Tons of their songs transition into these long instrumentals. Definitely another Zeppelinism. And just like I said with One Day as a Lion, these guys will play on an already existing section but change one part to make it feel new. In Bandoliers, the guitars play the same progression from the verse while the bass and drums pick up. Or during Warsaw when the walking bass line takes over the whole song. Suffice to say, there's a lot to enjoy on this album, which is probably my only criticism with it. Like, this album kicks ass, but I feel you can lose steam on some of the longer, jammy songs on the second half. I'd recommend listening to this in spurts, because just like what I said with Shadow Puppets, there's a lot you want to appreciate. Like, I've listened to this thing more times than I can count, and I'm still finding extra guitar tracks and junk on these things. As for another album, the band has wanted to do one for over a decade. Because of everyone's schedule, they haven't had the time. Thankfully, it still seems like they're interested in the project. Like, they reunited to play some of the Taylor Hawkins tribute shows a few years ago, and Dave and Josh like talking about it sometimes, so we'll see. That's the sad reality of supergroups or projects like these. Artists don't have the time to do them as much as fans would want them to. Which makes sense, because usually these are just like fun things they do on the side with their friends. And as much as I'd love to live in a reality where bands like Them Crooked Vultures, Rocket Juice, and SMV release stuff like somewhat regularly, I'm just happy these bands existed in the first place. That's where I'm gonna call it for now. As usual, thank you for watching. I made a playlist with some of these guys and other supergroups I liked in the description. Also, tell me what your favorite supergroups are in the comments. Shout out to my Patrons, and I'll see y'all next time for a lecture on analog synthesizers.